Dermatologist Debriefs. Join no-nonsense dermatologist Dr. Stefanie Williams as she debunks myths and shares her professional insights, separating facts from fiction in just a few minutes.
Hello, this is Dr. Stefanie. Today I'm speaking about the inconvenient truth about Bakuchiol that nobody wants to hear. Surprise, surprise. Bakuchiol is a rather trendy skincare ingredient right now. You see it appearing in loads of different skincare products. Some companies even reformulate, removing established evidence-based ingredients and replacing them with Bakuchiol. It's like some mad craze. So unless you've been living under a stone, I'm sure you will have heard someone or another rave about it. And what you hear a lot is that Bakuchiol is a plant-based retinol, supposedly. Well, there are many romanticized phrases going around about it, and I have heard it all, including retinol's plant-based sister, or vegan retinol for sensitive skin, or green next-generation retinol. I could go on. And these may all be very cute, but actually Bakuchiol is not a retinoid at all. So all those phrases are plain wrong. And before I explain, let me clarify. So the word retinoid is the family name for a group of vitamin A derivatives, while retinol is one of the family members. But there are many other family members, like, for example, retinaldehyde or the large group of retinol esters, such as retinol palmitate. But coming back to today's topic, let me say it again. Bakuchiol is chemically not related to retinol. It does not belong into the family of retinoids at all. So if you only take one thing away from today's podcast, let it be this. And please, let's stop misnaming it. So why do people then call it a plant-based retinol? Well, there was a study published in the British Journal of Dermatology, the BJD, in 2019, where 0.5% Bakuchiol cream twice daily improved wrinkles and pigmentation to a very similar degree to 0.5% retinol once daily. Well, I don't even find that particularly impressive. You basically needed to apply the Bakuchiol twice as much to get the same benefit as with retinol. And they hail it as a retinol equivalent, really? Anyway, that's probably one of the studies where that retinol comparison claim came from. And then there was another study from 2014 where researchers found that Bakuchiol has a somewhat similar gene expression profile compared to retinol. So, in other words, it behaves a little bit like retinol, both in terms of skin benefits and some of the genes it nudges on. For example, genes involving type 1 and type 3 collagen. However, that's not even unique to Bakuchiol and retinol. There are other skincare ingredients like vitamin C or certain peptides, for example, that also boost collagen pathways. And we're not calling those retinol's little sister, are we? And to be clear, Bakuchiol does not turn on the full retinoid gene program. And, as mentioned, it is not a vitamin A molecule, chemically, I mean. But because in that clinical study, Bakuchiol caused less skin irritation than retinol, this made it an even more marketable ingredient, especially as people always assume everything plant-derived is automatically safe. But far from it. I'll come back to that. Firstly, though, if Bakuchiol is not a plant-derived retinol chemically, which it isn't, because it has no structural resemblance to retinoids at all, what is it? Bakuchiol is an extract from the seeds and leaves of a plant called Zoarlea corallifolia, a plant also used in traditional Ayurvedic and Chinese medicine, although these days Bakuchiol is often synthetically produced. Chemically, Bakuchiol does not share the vitamin A backbone of retinoids, and it is not converted into retinol, which is retinaldehyde, or retinoic acid, which acts on our skin cells' retinoic acid receptors. Chemically, Bakuchiol is a meroterpenoid, so a hybrid molecule that is half phenol and half terpene. And when I hear terpene, my ears prick up, because guess who is another family member from the terpene group? Limonene and linalool, which are often used to replace fragrance in skincare. And oxidized limonene and linalool are recognized as frequent contact allergens in patch test patients. I certainly see many allergies to these two ingredients in my own patients. So terpenes as a group have a little bit of an allergic sensitizer reputation. And because Bakuchiol is also relatively unstable and can oxidize easily, some authors have raised concerns that oxidized fractions might be even more sensitizing, similar to what we see in oxidized fragrances like limonene and linalool. I don't know about you, but personally, I would much rather use a potentially irritating ingredients with decades of data than a higher risk allergenic ingredient, because irritation potential of an ingredient can be generally well managed and in the vast majority of cases completely avoided if you introduce the ingredient slowly, retinize your skin gradually, and use it as tolerated for your individual skin type and condition. So with the right type of education, retinol irritation is usually not a big problem in my experience. And if you look at the scientific literature, Bakuchiol has now indeed been flagged as a true allergen in cosmetics, meaning that the immune system can specifically sensitize and then react to even the tiniest amounts of this ingredient with eczematous or blistering rashes on re-exposure. What the exact true allergenic potential for Bakuchiol is not known yet. However, for retinol, which we have known and used for decades, we do know that it has very little intrinsic allergenic potential. And in contrast to irritant contact dermatitis, which is of course more common in retinoids, and which is concentration dependent, allergic contact dermatitis can occur even when you come in contact with only the tiniest amount of it. And the other bad news is that generally, once you sensitize your immune system and you're allergic to an ingredient, that will likely stay with you for the rest of your life. And I say all of this as somebody who has actually had a blistering patch test reaction to Bakuchiol myself. This was after I reacted with an itchy rash to a certain skincare product, and I arranged an allergy patch test for myself where every single ingredient of that skincare product is applied separately to the skin in small metal chambers. And these chambers stay on the skin for 48 hours before removing them and doing the first reading, and then there is another reading at 72 hours. This type of allergic patch test is the standard tests dermatologists do to establish a delayed type allergic reaction, which is typical for allergic contact dermatitis. And in my case, when I tested my skin against all those ingredients, I developed a blistering allergic reaction under the Bakuchiol chamber. It was not a pretty picture, I can tell you. That's to say that Bakuchiol is not a universally gentle, quote-unquote, ingredient without any risks. It is not this vegan angel everybody seems to make it out. Another issue we are facing is also that those studies that looked at irritation potential and found Bakuchiol less irritating than retinoids only looked at short-term skin irritation. However, skin allergies typically develop only over time, so that's after months or even years of use. So these studies would have not picked that up and may very well underestimate long-term safety issues like delayed contact sensitization. In fact, contact allergy often only develops after a long period of uneventful use, during which your immune system is being primed, but once sensitization has occurred, even low-level exposure, for example, from a different product, can trigger a nasty dermatitis flare. And because Bakuchiol is now being put into near everything from cleansers to serums, moisturizers, even barrier creams, a sensitized person can be repeatedly exposed without sometimes even realizing it, which could potentially lead to a chronic facial or eyelid eczema. And an added problem may be that Bakuchiol may appear on marketing material as a proprietary botanical complex or so, making it harder for allergenic patients to identify and avoid this ingredient unless they take a very close look at the small print of the INCI list. People with pre-existing eczema, rosacea, or a history of allergies, in particular to fragrance or plants, are generally at higher risk of reacting to botanical actives like Bakuchiol, especially in leave-on products used on the face and the eyelids. But these groups are exactly those heavily targeted by the narrative gentle retinol alternative, which sadly puts them at greater risk of developing contact allergy to Bakuchiol over time. Bakuchiol has fueled a wave of retinol-free anti-aging lines. And in my professional opinion, that will hugely backfire. But what's the problem with retinoids anyway? I mean, yes, they have to be introduced gradually because they may be irritating if you use too much too quickly. But that's relatively easy to manage in my experience. And yes, in pregnancy, retinoids must, of course, be avoided. We also know that. But retinoids remain the gold standard of anti-aging skincare actives. They have more scientific evidence behind them than any other ingredient, and they are the dermatologist's favorite toy for a reason. Describing Bakuchiol as a gentler, almost familial twin of retinol is not only factually incorrect, but also glosses over the fact that the evidence base is tiny compared to decades of retinoid data. You'll certainly not find me changing from evidence-based retinoids to Bakuchiol, even if I wasn't highly allergic to it. I hope this makes sense, and I will speak to you again soon.